Hello everyone, in this video we'll be doing the naming of aldehydes, ketones and carboxylic acids. Now there are three different functional groups. Now the chemistry of these functional groups you will be studying in a later video, but let's start off with the naming. Now aldehydes are a functional group in which the suffix -al has to be added to the end of the longest carbon chain. Now let's look at the first three aldehydes of the series. An aldehyde will always have a bonding like this. Keep that in mind. And that is what all of these look like, right? Now the first aldehyde is called methanal because it is a one carbon aldehyde. Then we have ethanal and then we have propanal. So keep these in mind, right? Now let's move on to some more complicated examples of aldehydes and their naming. So now over here again the carbon chain must be identified as the longest one, and the C double bond OH must have the smallest number. Now let's number it accordingly. Now the C double bond OH has the number of 1, and the methyl group, which is a substituent, has the number of 5, right? So now let's number this in, let's name this entire compound. It would be 5-methyl hexanal, right? So why 5-methyl? Because the fifth carbon has the methyl group. Hexanal because there are 6 carbons in the longest carbon chain. Now we have the functional group on the first carbon, that is why we haven't written 1 in the middle of the name, and it doesn't really matter if you write it or not, especially for this case. Okay, so now let's do the next example. Again we would number from the right because that would be the smallest number to the C double bond OH. Now let's look at the substituents. We have a chlorine substituent, a methyl substituent, and 2 bromine substituents. Now we would name this compound by starting off with the bromines. 5,6 dibromo 6 chloro 4 methyl heptanal. Now why 5,6 dibromo? Clearly you can see the 5th and the 6th carbon have the bromine substituents on them, so 5,6 dibromo. 6 chloro because the 6th carbon has the chlorine substituent, and 4 methyl because the 4th carbon has the methyl substituent. Heptanal because hept is there due to the 7 carbons in longest carbon chain, and heptanal is there due to the aldehyde nature of the entire compound. Now moving on to the naming of ketones. Now in ketones, this is the functional group, R C double bond O R that prime, where R and R primes cannot be hydrogens. R and R primes must be the same or different alkyl groups, and the suffix "-one", this is not one, it's "-one". It's "-one" because when you see it'll come in the name, it'll be pronounced as "-one", right? So there's actually a dash over here, so it will be pronounced as "-one". The suffix "-one" must be added to the longest carbon chain. So now the first ketone is this and the second ketone is this, right? So let's just name these ketones and then we will understand it. This is called propanone, so the first ketone in this series is a 3-carbon ketone, right? Then the next ketone in this series is a 4-carbon ketone which has the name of butanone. Now this can also be called butan 2-one. Why? Because the second carbon has the double bond O on it, right? So it can be called butanone also. Now let's look at some more examples, right? Now over here also, you would have to number the carbon atoms first, and we would number it from the right hand side so that the double bond O is with the smallest number. So we have a methyl substituent and we have a bromine substituent. Now let's name this. It would be called 3-bromo 4-methyl pen 2-one. Why 3-bromo? Because the third carbon has the bromine substituent. 4-methyl because the fourth carbon has the methyl substituent. Pent because there are 5 carbons in the longest carbon chain. And 2 because the second carbon has the double bond O attached to it, which is the functional group. And one simply because it is a ketone. Now what if we have a cyclical ketone? Let's look at that. Simply you would count from here, right? So you don't have to put any numbers in the name. Simply see there is a 6 carbon ketone, so you would call it cyclohexanone. Why hex? Because it is a 6 carbon ketone, right? Now we can move on to carboxylic acids. Now carboxylic acids must have the suffix oic acid in the end, right? The first 2 carboxylic acids of the series I have written in front of you with their displayed and structural formulas. So now let's look at them. The 1 carbon carboxylic acid is called methanoic acid, and the 2 carbon carboxylic acid is called ethanoic acid. Now let's look at this random carboxylic acid that I have given in an example, right? This must have the smallest number, so let's number according to that. We have a bromine substituent, we have a methyl substituent, so now let's name it 2-bromo 3-methyl butanoic acid. So why 2-bromo? Because the second carbon has a bromine substituent, 3-methyl because the third carbon has a methyl substituent, and butanoic acid because there are 4 carbons in the longest carbon chain. The first carbon has the functional group, therefore you do not need to mention that, right? So now this is it for this video, and in the next video we'll be studying 2 more functional groups, and that will be it. Thank you.